So I enjoy speaking up here, and I picked the loudest suit possible that I could wear for you guys today. I'm mixing up patterns, and it's all for the streaming service so that the video can not grab every pattern that is shown on my person. Anyway, I am doing a sermon on The Little Prince, which is a movie that is on Netflix, but it's also a children's book, and it's been adapted many other times after that. From the book is written by a French author, Saint-Exupéry, and there is something very universal about what his story is about. And this movie was released, I think it was released in 2015, and then it fell through the distribution rights for America. So the whole world had this movie, except for us. And then Netflix stepped in, and now we have it. Last year it was officially on Netflix for us to enjoy. And I hope most of you have seen it. This is a story that's been around for a while, so there's going to be spoilers and I'm going to be jumping around. But let's invite the Holy Spirit to come in. Very good, if you will. Dear Lord, thank you for the Sabbath day you've given to us, the opportunity for us to gather. I'd just like to invite the Holy Spirit to come into this place. All right, so The Little Prince. Let's start, if you haven't seen it, well, probably have, hopefully. We'll start with playing the trailer.
You're going to be a Worth Academy graduate because I'm excited. Life plan, hour of the day of the week, you'll be able to the month of the year, the year of your life. We're not leaving anything to chance.
Oh, here I am, up here.
You are going to make a wonderful grown-up.
Thank you, Mom. I just wanted to give your drawing back.
You want it?
No, I did. Once upon a time, there was a little prince who lived on a planet that was scarce bigger than himself.
I never find anyone who wouldn't be here by the door.
If his drawing sheep. What was a kid doing there in the desert? There was no mention of life on any of the planets.
I'm after Story B612. And the little prince. He's very fond of things, yes.
Did you finish your study work?
No, exactly. I made a friend.
If you study hard and you stay completely on track with the plan, you can spend some time with your new friend next summer.
Look at that. Storms around.
Hey, come and play with me.
I cannot play with you. I'm not tamed. What if you tame me? I'm sure we need each other. And if I got to me, you will be unique in all the world. But it's essential. It's invisible to the eye. When the moment does come, the moment begins, I have to go alone.
Not so sure I'm going to be more.
There's nothing wrong with it. You're going to make it a wonderful world.
The trailer still moves me. I hope it moved you a little bit. So let's go into a quick summary. A Little Prince is from the planet, the asteroid B612, And he's landed in the Sahara Desert, which is most of what the book, or the setting in which the book takes place in. And in there, he is greeted by an aviator. In the book, he's the narrator that is speaking to us. And his plane has crashed, and he's stuck in the desert with no way out. So on the outset, there are a lot of biblical symbols and symbolisms that we can gather from that. The desert being the setting that the Israelites wandered in for 40 years. There's also a well in the desert, which reminds me of the Samaritan woman by the well with Jesus. And then the little prince could be substituted or as a surrogate for either Christ or ourselves. And then there's mentions of lambs, where the lamb is always seen as the sacrificial lamb of Jesus. And there is also a snake in the desert, which is also seen, and in this case, death. But what I like about the movie is that it takes the original story and wraps it around it. Like we saw in the trailer, there is a little girl who's trying to get into school, and her mom is trying to figure out the best career path, or in this case, for her little daughter. I would submit to you guys that we are the little girl in this movie, and we have a prepared answer for an interview at a prestigious school, but what happens is that she gets asked a different question than the one she's prepared. So, to me, that says that we have the answers for a question that hasn't even been asked of us, but yet we're still looking almost fruitlessly, as if we're in a desert of our own making and not a geographical desert that the aviator is in. So the desert is normally a barren place, a place that life doesn't exist, but yet there's life all around. I don't know how many of you guys have been to Joshua, but that is a desert by all definitions, but yet there are trees, there's flowers, and if some of you were fortunate enough to go during the super bloom, you could have seen all the plant life that was there. But going back to the story, the desert has no water. And the aviator and the little prince are looking for a way to quench their thirst. On this journey, the little prince meets a snake at one point. And, you know, snakes are pretty bad. They've always been seen as something not good. And in this case, in the story, the snake is like a harbinger of death. And to me, that speaks to the truths of life. Like, we're all on the same race. We're running the same race, but yet the end is something that everybody has to meet. We're all going to die. That's just a fact. Some people like to dwell on that. I've been reminded of that fact this past week. 2 people that I know have passed away, and it made me think about this story even more. People like to think that they can prolong death, but it's a thing that happens whether we like to admit it or not. And the same way that the little prince is speaking to the aviator, he's able to bring out truths and ask questions in a simple way rather than like we do, where we try to skirt around the issues or ignore things. But in one case, the desert can also be a symbol of one's mind. In the story, the children or the little prince is seen as something to strive for, where the adults are seen as narrow-minded and something not to be. And the interactions that the aviator has with the little prince turns his barren mind, or his barren desert mind, into something else, by getting to know the little prince, by getting to spend time with him, to communicate with him, and to talk with him. And I think that's an important part, is that the little prince is seeking truth. And this comes into the fact when he meets the fox, and the fox says that if you want to talk with me, if you want to be around me, you have to tame me. And I think that it's very interesting how taming is used in this context, where the little prince needs the fox, and the fox also needs the little prince at the same time. So it's a two-way street as far as the relationships go. And I think that's something that's very important for modern day society, where we need to take time to listen to people, to get to know them, and not just do all the talking. We need to communicate, have a back and forth dialogue with one another. And the prince also is able to see what the essence of the fox is, and that's something that's very non-adult if you take it in the context of his story, where beforehand in the book he meets a king, a vain man, a businessman, and a geographer. And one of them says that he owns the stars, but how can you do that? It's only a concept that adults came up with in this case. But the little prince's inquisitiveness is the key to understanding happiness. Because the little prince hungers for both adventure and introspection. Exploration of the outside world and exploration within himself is something that I think we all can learn from. And seeking truths in what is essential, it reminds me of like the fox being tamed by the little prince. You know, let's say long ago when Adam was figuring out what animals were going to do what, and naming things with Eve, how did they decide what animals would be pets and what animals would be wild? You know, there was that process, and you know, in my mind I'm thinking, like, pets were decided to be pets because they were the ones that you couldn't eat. Maybe he tried eating them, and we're like, these aren't delicious animals, so what we're going to do is we're going to put sweaters on them and give them people names. I don't know. But, you know, there's just all kinds of things that could have happened, but, you know, what is the essence of what makes a pet? What makes something wild? What makes something tame? And at one point, the narrator, he's still thirsting, and he gets somebody in the book, it's not in the movie, somebody sells him a pill to quench his thirst. And when he takes this pill, he thinks of Christmas time. To me, he's saying that the essence of what he's really hungry for is something deeper than physical thirst. He's spiritually thirsting in a desert of his mind, because he goes back and he thinks about the happy times and the ceremonies and the things that he did as a child. And to me, that just says that is really what people thirst for. It's not, you know, we're not going to get our thirst quenched by Gatorade, but we're going to get it quenched from something else. And also a quote from the movie, it says, "What makes a desert beautiful is that somewhere it hides a well." And I think that is true for all of us. Somewhere we're hiding something beautiful for somebody else to partake of and to be a part of. And then moving on from the little prince seeking, when he's seeking truths change you, they transform you. It's enlightenment through exploration. It's growth, not only physically, but spiritually. In the story, unlike most stories that we're used to, the characters don't change on the outside. They change on the inside. The little prince doesn't become the little king. Or the rose doesn't turn, the flower doesn't turn into like a bushel of roses or flowers. And I think that's very different from what we're used to seeing in stories. The little prince is able to separate the important from the unimportant by making new friends and conversing with them. This is in the book and not in the movie. Again, the little prince mistakes his echo for the voice of humans, and that he thinks that they're too repetitive. These quick judgments lead to developing dangerous stereotypes. This also prevents questioning and open-mindedness that are important to being a well-adjusted human and having a happy life. Again, narrow-mindedness is a trait of an adult seen in this story. And we all start off as kids and become adults, so it's time that changes us from being optimistic, mystery-seeking, to being narrow-mindedness and being very black and white and legalistic. Where in Matthew 18, I will just read that for you real quick. Matthew 18, chapter 2. He called a child, had him standing among them, and said, I tell you the truth, unless you turn around and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever humbles himself like this little child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. So not only do we hear Jesus saying this in the Bible, but we get it illustrated through symbols and literature. In this case, the movie on Netflix, that it's the little child that is really what to strive for. TED Talk with Megan Phelps. I don't know how many of you know that name, but that is a former member of the Westboro Baptist Church, and they're the ones that picket around public gatherings, servicemen funerals, and they just espouse hate in the name of God. Interesting enough is that she turned around and was able to leave the church, her church, and her family, and she was able to speak on acceptance and a complete 180, and I don't know what else to attribute that to, because logic dictates that she grew up in that church. She should continue picketing and espousing hate wherever or however long she has left on this earth. But something happened, and she was able to converse with somebody on Twitter beyond the hate returnment, and able to talk to them, dialogue with them. And I think that's what really breaks down borders, is talking with people on a human level. And I don't know what else to attribute that to. And a quote in the movie reminds me of that. When a mystery is too overpowering, one dare not disobey. To me, that's an intervention. That's divine intervention of somebody who is rooted in hate, that is now on the opposite side, championing for love and acceptance. Moving on to The Little Prince. Innocence is defined as freedom from guilt or sin through being unacquainted with evil. To me, that's what the Little Prince is. He's an innocent child in a barren wasteland, and he's looking for things and looking for people. And he's not just looking to find a way out of the desert, but he's looking to make a connection with somebody. And again, that goes to that the line in the movie, what makes a desert beautiful is that somewhere it has a well. And so through his persistence with talking with the aviator, and the aviator's persistence with wanting to fix his plane, they eventually wander off and they find a well in the desert that they're able to quench their thirst, get some water in them, those essential fluids replenished. And if they had just given up and submitted to their fate of death, they would not have found this oasis in the desert. So another part of what the Little Prince story teaches us is that perseverance is something that we should do. We should persevere with our relationships, with our communication, with our dialogue with one another. I think hate is just too easy. It's too easy to hate somebody because you don't know that person. But once you get to know that person, I think it's a little more difficult to hate them. I don't know if you've ever had something switch like that within you. I hope you never have to, but the easy way out is not, the easy way out doesn't lend itself to the word perseverance. I think that's what's really important and what the narrative of the Little Prince is teaching us. And then with that, responsibility demanded by a relationship with others leads to greater understanding and appreciation of one's responsibilities to the world in general. I think once we are able to connect with somebody, we can become better citizens of the world, and we can see this place as our home, and not just like we're passerbys like the Little Prince. Like here's another truth that kind of struck me while preparing for this sermon, is that we're all astronauts, we're all space travelers, because if we take a moment and we stay still, we probably cannot feel ourselves moving, but the Earth is spinning through space, and we are all astronauts on a spaceship called Earth. Well, I mean, that's one way to put it. A while ago, well, not, I mean, depending on what you call a while ago, everything revolved around the Earth, and nothing revolved around the sun. And then that changed through communication and perseverance, that now we know and we understand that the Earth is the one revolving around the sun. And also, just I'm reminded of the other truth of death, that the Little Prince is able to communicate, and it's something that we cannot escape. But back to what I was mentioning about getting to know people. The fox, when he's talking with the Little Prince, explains that by investing oneself in another person, that makes that person and everything associated with that person more special. Because once you know somebody, you can buy them a gift that they will appreciate, as opposed to, I don't know, socks or clothes when you're a little kid. Because when you're a little kid, you're like, what am I going to do with this? I want a toy, I want this or something. But then when you're an adult, suddenly socks become cool again. And then you want to wear them for different occasions. So I think that goes to getting to know somebody. You have to know what that person is, what is the essence of that person, in order to give a thoughtful gift. If somebody is a fan of, let's say, like dolphins, you wouldn't give them a shark, even though they kind of look the same. You would know the difference, because you know the difference in that person next to a stranger. Another thing that the Little Prince teaches us is that characters move out of their comfort zone. The Little Prince is ruler of his own planet, and it's an asteroid with his rose and baobab plants and volcanoes, but yet he longs for interaction, for meaning in other people, in other human beings. And he goes away from his planet and travels to Earth. It's like us reaching out to the city and saying, what do you need? This is a safe space. All are welcome. And we're gonna get down and dirty. We're gonna have a shower ministry. We're gonna have outreach. We're gonna have, we just started a prayer group with the upper room. We're just gonna see what the needs of the people are. We're gonna try to meet them. And I think moving out of your comfort zone is something that is very valuable in this day and age, where we live in a first world where things come easy to us. We have running water, we have food. I mean, you can go to Costco and eat for free at lunchtime. Get as many samples as you want. I mean, these are things that we are used to, and we need to break out of the comfort zone and meet the people that are our neighbors, that are around us. And with that, we also need to look beneath the surface. Because not only when we seek truth, and we seek the essence of what people are, we also get transformed by it. And then we are able to look beneath the surface of what somebody looks like on the outside. And we get to peek into their heart of hearts. And then suddenly, this barren wasteland of the desert, we find that well that gushes life, waters of life, that I think we can find in everybody. I mean, in a city as big as LA, people can still feel lonely. How is that possible? Just think about that. To go back to the movie on this part, the aviator lives next door to the little girl, and the neighbors surrounding his house are people that are not necessarily the people I want to live next to. Because when something goes wrong at the aviator's house, they all come outside to see what's going on. The cops show up. They all huddle around, they whisper, they murmur, but they don't want to see what's going on. They don't want to help. It's only the little girl that helps. All the adults are not seen as somebody that's willing to get out of their comfort zone and go and help somebody in need. It's kind of like seeing, let's say, like furniture. Like there are different types of sofas that you can get. You can get an L-shaped sofa. I have an L-shaped sofa too, but it's lowercase. Anyway, so another thing that the movie shows us, or not the movie, the book shows us, is that the aviator draws a slide, or a picture of an elephant being eaten by a boa constrictor. And this is the drawing that he draws. And when he shows this to an adult, they say, it's a hat. But this is what the little prince and the aviator are able to see. There's really an elephant inside there. Just like there is a well in the desert. We need to look beneath the surface, to seek what's really the essence of who we are. It is, and here's a great quote from the movie. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. What is most important is what is invisible. And I'm reminded of the questions that John Lennon was asked. They asked, I'll just read the quote. They asked me what I wanted to be when I grow up. I wrote down happy. They told me I didn't understand the assignment, and I told them they didn't understand life. So much meaning in that. So much truth of what the essence of what Christ is trying to teach us. And a story I'd like to share with you real quick is that I have a younger brother, and when I was young, he accidentally hit or slammed the door on my foot. And it was, I think it was my pinky toe, and that really, really hurt. But being young and naive as I was, I yelled at him, I called him names, I called him stupid. And I said, why would you do that? That's moronic. Did you not see me coming through the door? And then later on, he ended up crying because he was sorry for what he did. And later on in life, he told that story to people. And then he said, my brother yelled at me for hurting him. His toes hurt me, he yelled things at me, he called me names, and he scolded me. But you know what my brother did anyway? He loved me. And that moved me, because he was able to see through all that anger and that rage that I was feeling, that he knew that I still loved him. He was my brother, and that wouldn't change. And I'd just like to end with another quote from the movie. But you don't, talking about the goodness in people, but you don't know for sure. And the aviator replies back to the little girl, well, it would comfort me very much to know for sure, but instead I choose to believe. I choose to believe that God speaks to us through many different avenues of life. We just need to open our ears to seek the truth and find things like in The Little Prince, this movie on Netflix. I would never have thought that I would be hearing God's voice through this simple parable of life. And I hope that we can continue to open our minds and our hearts to receiving God's message in whatever ways He chooses to speak with us. So like the Little Prince, I hope that you will find your well in the desert, and that through perseverance you too will be able to fix your plane and go back home, as we all hope to do. Thank you.